This video is page 81 in our notes, and this is working on standard SP4 histograms. So we're going to learn about histograms. We'll draw one, and we'll go on to some important terms. So what do you need to know about histograms? So I'll show you an example of a histogram. It kind of looks like a bar graph, and this is actually what we're going to end up drawing. The difference with a histogram is instead of the bar representing one thing, the bars are going to represent, see how the time's 0 to 29, and then it picks up 30 to 59, 60 to 89. So it's a range of time or a range of data, and they're into equal intervals, and then you actually have to shade them in. So I'm going to use a highlighter in my notes to shade them in. We're going to end up doing that. So a histogram is similar to a bar graph. Histogram is a data display that shows a range of data into, and this is important, it's into equal intervals. And it's going to show how often those intervals occur. So when we talk about how often the intervals occur, that's another word, frequency. How often is how frequent do they occur? We call that frequency. So there's a couple terms here, so I'm going to change colors as you're writing that. Obviously, we want you to know what histograms are. And I showed you kind of a picture. It reminds you of a bar graph at first glance, but it's a range of data. And so in their equal intervals, and showing how often those intervals are going to occur. So we call that the frequency, how often they occur. So on your histogram, your horizontal axis is your x, which represents your continuous intervals. So put a star here. Your horizontal axis, which is x, represents the continuous intervals. And continuous intervals, so when I showed you the picture of the histogram, so it was 0 to 29, then the next one picked up right after 29 would be 30 to 59, and then 60 to 89, so they pick up right after where the other one leaves off. So your horizontal axis is going to represent the continuous intervals. There are no gaps between the bars. That's the big thing. There are no gaps between the bars. So that's what's different than like a bar graph. A bar graph normally just means like if you were asking someone their favorite colors and you have a bar for each color, you normally put gaps between them, but there are no gaps between the bars. So that's important to know when you draw your histogram. Most histograms can also be represented with data in a table. So I'm going to make a table. The table below shows the number of minutes, and I'm going to abbreviate number as the number sign, number of minutes that 25 students spent reading one day. So this is kind of explaining what our table down below is going to be. The table shows the number of minutes that 25 students spent reading each day. So within the table here, I'm gonna leave this line blank and then come down here. I'm gonna label this one number of minutes, and then this one's going to be the frequency. So when I kind of draw a line here, split them up, kind of do something like this. So I've got 0 to 29 minutes. I'm going to kind of draw a bar here. The frequency is 1, meaning like one student read between 0 and 29. Then we've got 30 to 59, that was 3. 60 to 89, that's 5. 90 to 119, that's 7. 120 to 149, that's 5. 150 to 179, that's 3. And then 180 to 209 was 1. Let's give you a chance to make your table, and I was trying to make those so it all fit on one line so you don't have to go to the next one. So if you're going to draw your histogram has to have a title. So we're looking at, this is talking about number of minutes that 25 students are reading. And so the title could be something about time spent reading, students are reading, something like that. So my title is going to say time spent reading. So you need a title. So if I ask you to draw a histogram, you need to know it has a title. We have to have an X and Y axis, so I'm going to trace the red line, and I'm going to use that as like my coordinate grid here. Let's see here. I have to go, if I go to, we'll make this one 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This one would be 0. So I kind of made sure I had enough room to make this on my paper. If this is 0, then I can trace the blue line coming over here. So what you kind of learn here is the number of minutes, that's your X, and then your frequency is going to be your Y. So you need to label your, oops, sorry, you can't see that. So your number of minutes, X, and your frequency, Y, you would need to label that. So this is your Y-axis over here. So this one will be labeled frequency. And what does frequency mean? Like how often that's happening, how often it's occurring. So 1 is actually referring to 1 student is reading 0 to 29 minutes. 3 is referring to 3 students read between 30 and 59 minutes. This is your x-axis, and we are labeling this one time. Oops, let me move this up so you can see. This will be time, and it's labeled in minutes. And so these have to be continuous intervals. You have to make sure that you make them and they're all like evenly spaced. So let's see, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns or 7 parts to this histogram. So I'm going to try to make them evenly spaced by kind of putting my finger here and then making a tick. There's 1, my finger there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I believe the 7th one will be here. So to make our intervals, now you're not labeling the tick, like here the 1 was on the line, like for this line, they're on the ticks here. You're not labeling the tick down below. Your it's a range of, so 0 to 29 is going to range from 0 to 29 has to fit in between here and this line. Then the next one is 30 to 59, and then 60 to 89, 90 to 119, 120 to 149, 150 to 179, and then 180 to 209. So as you're writing that in, I'm not going to give you a chance to do that. This actually ranges 30 numbers because you have to include 0. If you just count 1 to 29, there's 29 numbers. But if you include 0 in there, that's actually 30 numbers. And then 30 to 59 is 30 numbers. So each one's worth 30. And where 1 stops, the next one picks up. So when I draw the histogram, there was a frequency of 1. So you go from the edge of the histogram over and then down to this line. And then this one is continuous on this line. It shares the same line. It goes up to 3. So you're going to make it go straight up to 3, and then you trace the blue line over. So there's no gap between them. And then this one was up to 5, so it shares the same line here. This line also has to go straight up, but it goes all the way to 5. So as you keep going straight up to 5, this one goes straight up, trace the blue line over. This one's 7, so this line has to go up here to 7. This one goes straight up. So they share the same sides, essentially. There's no gaps in between them. The 120 to 149 goes up to 5, so you could just start at the 5 and work your way this way and go up. Nice and neat. This one was 3, so over 3 this way, straight up. And then this one is 1 and down. So it looks like we're all done. The last thing you just have to do is you have to shade them in because histograms are shaded in. So I'm just going to use a highlighter to kind of shade these in here. And hopefully I don't get too much marker pen on them. Use your highlighter to shade them in. And do you recognize the shape or the overall distribution of the data here? We talked about this when we did with dot plots. This is actually a bell curve or normal distribution or symmetrical. So it kind of goes back to what we learned in the other lesson. Shade it in at the end and you're done. No gaps between them. Now, what if there was, like maybe nobody read between the 120 and 149, then this would just be blank. This bar would come up, then it would look like there's a gap here, and then this one would go to 3. If no one read here, then this would just be blank. So there is a chance there could be a gap in it if nobody reads in that amount of time. But no gaps meaning that all the bars are touching.